This episode is brought to you by Ariston Specialties in Bloomfield, Connecticut. They're makers of amazing olive oils and other Greek delights. Check them out online at aristonspecialties.com. That's Ariston, Ariston, specialties.com. The sensuality of food words. They're the secret to great menu writing, and they can drive me wild. I read cookbooks before I go to sleep. So let me say these three words: juicy grilled steak. We're here to help you, Chris Prosperi and I, to make these coming right up. Welcome to our new podcast series of the Food Schmooze Party. You can find all of our brand new episodes and sign up at our new site so it arrives in your inbox at faithmiddleton.com. It's just easier to spell. The Food Schmooze All-Star Chris Prosperi of Metro Beast in Simsbury, Connecticut is with me. The other guys will be back. Okay, Chris, grilled juicy steak. I can hear that.
It.
Yeah, go tell me.
All right, so I have a question for you because I don't know a lot about your grilling steaks. The first question I always ask people, marinate or not marinate? How do you do it? Do you marinate your steaks or do you just do it pure?
I do it pure.
Love it.
The way but because I like to taste steak.
Yeah.
And not that if someone is doing a rub, I mean, I have a great rub recipe too, but you know, I don't need that. I have a grill pan and I just, with the ridges, cast iron, and I sear one side and then I flip it over. So let's talk about, Chris, from the start.
Okay.
How to grill steaks. Okay. So how long do you want to keep it outside the fridge before you start grilling? You don't want it in the fridge and straight to your grill.
No.
That sabotages you.
And I wouldn't say sabotage. It just doesn't come out as good if you do it that way. And it makes sense because, even just think about you. If you're, I don't know, let's just say if you're in the refrigerator, like if you're in an air conditioned room or a refrigerated room and you run outside to 100-degree temperature, right? There's definitely a shock that goes on. So the more you raise the temperature of the steak before you put it on the grill, the better it comes out. You don't get that initial shock of putting something ice cold on a 500-degree grill. And it also helps with the grill too, right? Because remember, taking some ice cold and putting it on a grill lowers the temperature of the grill. So I always say if you do 10 to 15 minutes, it's safe. You don't have to worry about anything. And it gives it enough time just to bring it up to where the outside is approaching room temperature, especially if we're talking about an inch to an inch and a half thick steak.
Okay, so we're talking about, say, 15, 20 minutes outside the refrigerator, sitting right on your counter.
Yep.
Now, do I turn on the grill pan or, as you call it, the most underutilized thing in the entire kitchen, the broiler?
Yes.
So
preheat is 100%.
When do you turn on?
Yes.
Okay.
Preheating is probably one of the most important parts to right next to leaving your steak out, and let it warm up a little bit before you grill it. And of course, there's other things, but yes, you want to preheat. So if you're grilling, you want to put your grill on. If you're putting it in a grill pan, you want to make sure your grill pan is nice and hot. So turn it on all the way high and let it heat up for at least, say 3 to 5 minutes, just so you get it nice and hot. If it's a big outside grill, you want to preheat it for at least 15, 20 minutes. And the same thing with the broiler. You want to give the broiler about 10 minutes.
So when I'm preheating my grill pan or your cast iron skillet or whatever you do, I take, I just put my hand under the sink and then flick my fingers at the pan, and you'll see those little droplets start really sizzling away. Is that okay?
Yeah, they should dance, right? Those little, I always tell my cooks when I'm training them, that water, when it hits that dry cast iron pan, should literally dance right off the pan into steam.
So this sizzle, There is something about this can happen in a restaurant if you're having steak. This can happen in your kitchen or out in your backyard. It's unbelievable. That sizzling steak, when the waitron brings it towards your plate, if you're in a restaurant. Oh my God. I mean, I once ruined, I don't know, $1 million down vest because it absorbed. I was in one of those steak plates and it absorbed all the smells right off my table. So it's phenomenal. Okay. So for people who say, oh no, you have to be really careful not to have too much beef, there are ways to handle that. But when I said that sentence, you don't have too much beef, I was thinking, why is that again? I basically could have it every day. Not that anyone should, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think as far as like how often should you eat steak or how much should you eat? I think that's individual. You have to go with whatever you think is right for you. I'm in your camp. I love a steak. I try not to eat it every day because especially I have them here at the restaurant all the time. And I'm telling you, when you get, there's nothing better than when you are standing in the kitchen and boom, the first order has a steak, the second order has a steak, the third, and all of a sudden there's 15 steaks going at the same time. And that sizzle and pop and those little wisps of smoke that come off each steak as they caramelize. Oh, how could you not? I mean, it's funny because we talk about this a lot about whether we're omnivores or meat eaters or if steak didn't smell so good, I would say we could live on a vegetarian diet, but man, does steak smell good when it's cooking.
Yeah, I know. Okay, I'm with Chris Prosperi, my Food Schmooze brother, and this is the Food Schmooze Party. Where are we online? How do you find us? How do you sign up? Whatever you want. We are at faithmiddleton.com. And we are obviously talking about how to cook a steak. And I would say, and I could use your help on this, Chris, don't be scared. You know what? If you make a mistake, you make a mistake. If it's a little overcooked, it's a little overcooked. But so let's talk about when you pull it off, whatever heat you've got it on, no matter whether it's charcoal or your oven or the broiler or your fry pan like me. When do you look at it? And it's, the trick, if I got this right, Chris, because this is what I do, when it's just shy of what I really want. In other words, it's a little rare. Yes. I don't mean blue, because some people like that. Yep. It's just a little less than that's how I learned the hard way. Oh my God, it's called carryover cooking. Yep. It just keeps cooking. So how do we know? I cut mine into mine with a knife, which is a no-no, but how do we do it? How do we know?
See, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say cutting it with a knife is not a no-no. I think it's how you learn. I mean, I think you're right. This is for some reason, one of the scariest parts of grilling steaks or cooking steaks is when to take it off. When do I know it's ready? When do I know like how much more it's going to cook afterwards? And it really is a practice thing. So I always keep a little paring knife when I'm doing it at home. I keep a little paring knife next to my grill or next to my grill pan. And I'm not opposed to doing a little peeking, right? Because it is the truest way to tell. I mean, instant read thermometers are great. You can go online and find charts for the different temperatures, but I agree with you. If you're like it on the medium rare side, you want to take it off a little bit before that. The larger the steak, the more it's going to cook over after you take it off the grill, because it doesn't just stop cooking. And again, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, right? It's hot. Your grill is hot, or your grill pan is hot. Your broiler's hot. Your steak's cooking in there. As soon as you pull it out and put it on a plate or a little sizzle platter or whatever and let it sit, it's going to keep cooking because the heat is in there, right? So it's going to take a minute or two to slowly stop cooking. And you're going to see, especially with an inch thick steak, you could see, a half a doneness temperature go up. So yes, if you want it like nice and rare, you want to take it off just before that. Same thing with medium rare, take it off just before that. And I always see the easiest way why not peak? All the chefs that trained me were like, oh, the juices are all going to run out of it and all these things. And I always looked at them funny, like, it's not like once you grill it and sear it, it's not hermetically sealed. It's not like juices are trapped in there and can't come out until you cut it. And I'm not talking about cutting it in half, right? Just take a little incision and take a peek. It's not bad. It is really not bad. And if you do it, and then if you want to serve your steak whole, flip it over, no one's going to know.
So I lift mine up to see how far it has gone in terms of color. What kind of char I have on my fry pan on the outside on my cast iron. And, I'm looking for something kind of dark brown, but, I'm watching it. Do you think I've got my color right? Is it dark brown? Okay.
Yes, you want a nice caramel color, right? Because it's not just the color you're looking at, right? It's the flavor that caramelization gives to the outside of that steak. So and you want to make sure it's at that nice dark char, because that gives you all the flavor when you bite into it. But I'm also going to throw in something else too. Once you get it to the point you like it, once you get it that nice color and stuff, you want to let it sit. And this is so important, as important, if not more important, than letting it sit before you grill it or sear it, is letting it sit after. And that
10 minutes?
Yeah, 5 to 10 minutes for an inch and a half steak is plenty. And I'm telling you, if you do that, and you've never done it before, it's game changing. You will see what happens when you cook something is to say it simply, the moisture inside the steak gets pushed out, right? So cooking is removing moisture. That's the technical definition of cooking. So of course, if you can think about that now, the steak is on this, hot pan, and all the juices are being forced out. So they're heading away from the heat. So the bottom is up, right, is where the heat is, and all the juices are being pushed up. They're moving is what's happening. So letting them rest, when you take it off, all those juices resettle. And you'll see this if you cut the steak right away after you take it off the grill, you will see lines, right? You will see a dark line where it was grilling or searing, and then it'll start turning pink or red depending on where your doneness is, right? Now, if you let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes and just let it relax, that line will disappear, and your doneness will be the same color top to bottom of the steak. And like I said,
are you letting it relax in the pan?
No,
the hot pan.
Nope,
yes,
no,
on
no.
a plate
Out of
or
the pan, on a plate, cutting board, something that can accumulate the juices.
Too.
Because some of the juices, this is why I always wondered about the cutting. If you let your steak rest, you'll see some juices come out of it. Like I said, this isn't a hermetically sealed piece of meat. There are some juices flowing and moving around in it. So put it on a little platter, a little sizzle plate, whatever. And I'm not saying throw it in the refrigerator, just let it sit somewhere, even if it's just to the side of the stove or the side of the grill, just let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. And I'm telling you, it is so important. And you're going to see the first time you do it, you're going to see such a difference in your grilling.
Chris, do you remember by any chance where I was when I went to that famous steak place in New York City, and they had a trough in the kitchen along the cutting board, and they put the steaks after they've been grilled into a butter bath that was like a Venice canal. I mean, it was like, what? Because afterward, because of the work I do, they said, oh, come into the kitchen. The chef says, please come into the kitchen. And I took one look at my steak that had been sitting in a butter bath. And I thought, well, no one, and I could have put both shoes in there and they would have tasted delicious. Quick thing. The reason I'm bringing this up is if you take one tiny shaving of butter and rub it on your steak, especially grass-fed, so low fat, that gives the essence of flavor, but it's not in a butter bath.
So yes, you're 100% right. But what I was going to say is, so when all those juices are being pushed outward by the heat from the pan, right? And what happens now when you put that little pat of butter and you sort of smear it on top and let it sort of melt? Now, the juices are being pulled back into the center, right? And as they're pulling that juice back and settling into the center, as it relaxes and rests, it pulls some of that melted butter in with it. And that is just, I'm telling you, it's magic. We do it here at the restaurant. All I do when the steak comes off the grill, my grill cook has a little, he does, and I'm telling you, we learned this from you. As soon as you said that, you told me about a hamburger you did it to years and years ago. And now we just take that little pat of butter and it's room temperature, so it spreads nice and easy. And we just splash it right on the top and let it sit and rest with that little bit of butter on it. And it makes, again, all the difference in the world kind of thing.
There's not another thing I can add or should add to what this man just said. Oh, wow.
You know what we should talk about? One of the things we forgot is seasoning. If we don't marinate, then we season, right? And I'm pretty much a purist when it comes to that. There are certain times I like a nice rub, like with smoked paprika or something to give it a little, but a lot of times if I have a really good steak, I'm just a salt and black pepper and that's it.
Mm-hmm. And I put Diamond Crystal kosher salt on mine when just before I cook it. You do that?
Yeah, and and again, kosher salt I like, and again, it's not that it's a different salt. I just, as far as the taste or whatever, the thing is with kosher salt, I find it's easier to control because a lot of people always ask, why are chefs into like kosher salt? The main reason we use kosher salt is because it's less. The amount of salt is less in your hand when you're seasoning things because the crystal sizes are larger. So you have more control over it. When you use the iodized salt or table salt, the crystals are so small that when you're sprinkling it on something, it's so easy to over season it because there's so much salt in that little pinch. I always tell the story. We did a test at the Current years ago, and we took all the salts we could find in the supermarket, put them on a gram scale, right, and measured out a tablespoon. And the difference between table salt and kosher salt, it was double the table salt and kosher salt in a tablespoon. So that's the only reason we use kosher salt. It's just easier to control. I like it also with meat. It has little points in it. And those little points, do you know what I mean? They're shaped like a diamond. That's why it's called Diamond Crystal. Those points actually dig into the surface of the meat a little bit. It's microscopic, but it does make a difference in seasoning.
Now, listen, if you're hearing this, we want to set you free. If you're a vegetarian, you're being careful with meat, whatever it is, we want to set you free to, take a tofu steak or a portobello mushroom and do everything we're talking about with those. If you are into steak as we are, whether it's grass-fed or full fat, whatever it is, or a local farm, or a supermarket, whatever it is, season it as Chris says, and don't be afraid to do slices when you're really done and put them on top of a mound of potato salad or a mound of regular dressed salad and serve it that way. It is so good. It's insane. Thank you, Chris.
Oh, love it, love it, love it.
Thank you. You are so good at steak making. This is Chris Prosperi of Metro Feast in Simsbury, Connecticut. Joanne Church was our associate producer today, and we have been talking steaks. We'll see you at faithmiddleton.com.